The rain was coming down so hard it sounded like bullets on the windshield. Wipers on full speed, still useless. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, but I wouldn't slow down. I had a hearing in 40 minutes, and in my world, being late was worse than dying. Headlights blurred into streaks of light as I flew down the highway. My phone buzzed on the seat next to me, my wife. Again. I ignored it. The case came first. The judge came first. My reputation came first. Then it happened. A truck swerved in front of me, brake lights exploding red. I slammed my own brakes, but it was too late. Tires screamed, glass shattered, metal twisted. The impact felt like getting punched by God himself. I remember the smell of gasoline. The ringing in my ears. The taste of blood. And my wife's face. She had been following behind me in her own car, begging me to slow down. And in that last frozen moment before everything went black, I saw her running toward me in the rain, screaming my name. Then, silence. Not the silence of a quiet room. The silence of everything stopping at once. My heart, my breath, my life. For 20 minutes, I was dead. But I wasn't gone. What happened next, what I saw, what I heard, it changed everything. And if you stay with me, I will tell you the 3 questions Jesus asked me that will follow you to your grave. My name is Daniel. I'm 40 years old, a defense attorney with a reputation for winning cases that shouldn't be won. That was my identity, the man who could twist a jury, dismantle a witness, and save a client everyone else had given up on. On the outside, I looked like success. Sharp suits, a corner office, a car that cost more than some people's houses. But inside? I was a man running on fumes. Always tired. Always angry. Always chasing the next win. My wife, Emily, had stopped asking me to come to church years ago. Stopped asking me to take weekends off. Stopped asking me to put the phone down at dinner. Somewhere along the way, she'd learned that work always came first. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I missed my son's first school play because I was preparing a closing argument. When my daughter asked me to help with her science project, I handed her my credit card and told her to buy whatever she needed. I told myself I was doing it for them. For the house, the vacations, the college funds. But deep down, I knew it was for me. For my pride. For the rush of walking out of a courtroom knowing I had beaten the system again. The truth is, I wasn't just winning cases, I was compromising myself. Taking clients I knew were guilty. Using loopholes to get dangerous people back on the street. Every compromise felt small at first, but over the years they added up like bricks in a wall between me and everything that mattered. The day of the crash, I was racing to a high-profile case that could make or break my career. Emily called 3 times that morning. I silenced the phone. I told myself I'd call her after the hearing. But I never made it to the courthouse. And that's how my old life ended, with a ringing phone, a wet highway, and a man too proud to slow down. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I opened my eyes and saw myself, my own body pinned in the wreckage, blood pooling on the dashboard. Paramedics swarmed the car, shouting orders I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. One of them started chest compressions, his hands pumping frantically, but it all felt strangely far away, like watching a movie with the sound turned off. Then something happened. The pain was gone. The fear was gone. And suddenly, so was the weight of my body. I felt myself rise, not upward like a balloon, but in every direction at once. Weightless. Free. The rain blurred into glittering light, the sirens melted into a distant hum, and the world I'd spent 40 years clawing through suddenly seemed very small. And then I saw it. Ahead of me was not a tunnel but a horizon, a living, pulsing radiance that seemed to breathe. Colors shimmered that don't exist in this world. Gold that was more alive than fire. White that held every shade of light within it. The closer I drifted, the more I felt peace wash over me, wave after wave, until I almost forgot there was anything I had left behind. Then I heard it. A voice. It wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Daniel. Everything stopped. The light, the weightlessness, all of it held still as though the entire universe was waiting. I turned, and there he was. Jesus. I don't know how I knew it was him, but I knew. His presence was both terrifying and comforting, like standing in the eye of a hurricane that could destroy you with a breath, but chooses to love you instead. His eyes held more than I can describe: mercy, sorrow, and a love so deep it made my chest ache. "My child," he said, and the sound of his voice felt like music that was somehow written just for me. "You cannot stay here. Not yet. But come, I will show you why." Before I could speak, the light shifted around us, and the scene dissolved into something else entirely. In an instant, we stood in a place so vast it seemed to stretch beyond sight. It was not a courtroom like any I had ever seen, and I've spent half my life in courtrooms. This one had no walls, no ceiling, no judge's bench. And yet it radiated authority so absolute that my knees nearly buckled. Countless souls stood there, some shining like stars, faces alight with joy, others cloaked in shadow, bowed under the weight of something I could not see. There was no shouting, no chaos, just silence so profound that I could hear my own thoughts echo inside it. "This," Jesus said, his voice breaking the stillness without disturbing it, "is where every soul will stand one day. The day when everything hidden will be brought into the light. The day when love and justice will be made perfect." I could feel my chest tightening, not from fear exactly, but from the overwhelming realization that this was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced. "But why am I here?" I asked, my voice sounding small in that infinite space. "Because today," he said, "you will understand what truly matters. Today you will see what you have built with your life." He turned to me, and those eyes that had watched me since before I took my first breath, locked onto mine. "There are 3 questions every soul must answer on this day," he said. "Questions that determine eternity. And today, I will ask them of you." I could feel my spirit tremble, not in terror, but in awe. 3 questions. 3 chances to face the truth of my life. I wanted to speak, to protest, to plead that I hadn't been that bad, that I tried, but before the words could form, I felt the first question begin to rise in the air between us, like thunder before a storm. The silence in that vast hall seemed to deepen. Then Jesus spoke, his voice gentle yet unshakable. "Question 1, Daniel. Do you really know me?" It was such a simple question, but it struck me like a gavel. My first instinct was to nod. Of course I knew him. I went to church as a kid, I said the Lord's Prayer before meals, I knew the Christmas story by heart. But before I could speak, memories began to unfurl around me like a living film. I saw myself as a boy kneeling by my bed, whispering prayers with my mother. I saw the Sunday school teacher who taught me my first Bible verse. I saw my baptism, the water dripping from my hair as the congregation smiled and clapped. Then the scenes shifted. I was in high school, choosing football practice over youth group. In college, I skipped Sunday services to study for exams, then to sleep off hangovers. By the time I started law school, church was something I did on holidays if it didn't conflict with finals. And then came the years of ambition. Winning my first case. Landing my first major client. Buying my first expensive suit. Each success lit up something inside me, and I began to believe I didn't need anyone, not God, not faith, not anything beyond myself. "You knew about me," Jesus said softly, interrupting the scenes, "but you didn't know me. You never let me lead." The words pierced through me like light through glass. More memories came, the mornings when I had felt a strange pull to pray but checked my email instead. The times I'd promised God I would change if he just got me out of a jam, and the times I broke those promises as soon as the crisis passed. I realized with horror that I had treated God like a business partner, not a savior. I consulted him when I needed something, ignored him when I didn't. Tears burned my eyes. My knees gave way and I fell, my whole body shaking. "I believed in you," I whispered, my voice breaking. Jesus knelt beside me, his presence overwhelming yet impossibly tender. "Belief is not the same as surrender," he said. "You used my name to bless your plans, but you never asked for mine. You wanted me as a silent witness to your life, not the author of it." I wept like a child, the truth crashing over me. I had spent my life building a career, a reputation, a fortune, and in all of it, I had kept God at a distance. I had known about Him, but I had never known Him. The pain wasn't punishment. It was like a surgeon's scalpel cutting away infection. It hurt, but it was the hurt of being healed. When my sobs finally quieted, Jesus' voice filled the silence again. Question 2. Did you love people as I have loved you? If the first question had broken me, this one shattered me. The memories rushed in, faster this time, like a flood. I saw the homeless man who used to sit outside the courthouse steps. Day after day I'd stepped over him, never offering so much as a glance. I saw my assistant crying in the office bathroom after I humiliated her for a typo in a brief. I saw the face of a young mother weeping when I got her abusive husband acquitted on a technicality, and how I'd celebrated the win that night with champagne. Scene after scene unfolded, cutting, merciless, true. I saw the colleague who had come to me for help when his marriage was falling apart. I told him to man up and get back to work. 2 months later, he took his own life. I saw my children, their faces small and hopeful as they waited for me to show up at their soccer games, their piano recitals, their birthdays, and the look in their eyes when they realized I wasn't coming. I wasn't a bad person, I said hoarsely, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Jesus' gaze didn't waver. I did not ask if you were bad. I asked if you loved. And then I saw something that made my breath catch. I saw what could have happened if I had chosen differently. I saw myself stopping to talk to that homeless man, buying him a meal, learning his name. I watched him get back on his feet, find work, reunite with his family, and then go on to help dozens of others. I saw myself turning down that corrupt case, telling the truth even if it meant losing. I saw the victims' families finally getting justice and finding peace. I saw my daughter's face lighting up as I walked through the school doors to watch her perform, my son running into my arms after his winning goal. All the life I could have lived. All the love I could have given. My legs gave way completely, and I collapsed, my face against the floor of that endless hall. The grief was too much to bear. Not anger. Not fear. Grief for the life I had wasted and the people I had wounded by choosing myself over them. Please, I whispered through sobs. Please tell me I still have time to make it right. Jesus knelt once more, his hand resting on my shoulder. That is why you are here, he said gently. But there is one more question. I stayed on my knees, unable to lift my head, when Jesus spoke again, softly, almost like a whisper that shook the whole hall. Question 3, Daniel. What did you do with what I gave you? At first, I thought he meant money. But the moment the words left his lips, I knew he was asking about everything. In an instant, I was shown the sum of my life, not as I had seen it, but as heaven had seen it. I saw my mind, sharp as a blade, created to defend the weak, to speak truth for those without a voice. But instead of lifting up the broken, I had spent it sharpening arguments to defend the powerful, the guilty, the ones who could pay. I saw my voice, persuasive enough to move juries, meant to bring justice into dark places, but I had used it to bend justice to my will. I saw every dollar I had earned, each one like a seed meant to be planted to help others flourish. Instead, I had stacked them into monuments to my own importance. Cars, vacations, a house too big for the family who barely lived in it. I saw my marriage, the covenant I had been entrusted to protect, and how I had let it wither while I chased validation in courtrooms. I saw my children, eternal souls I had been called to nurture, and realized I had outsourced their hearts to teachers, coaches, and screens while I drafted contracts. Every blessing, every opportunity, every chance to be more than just a man in a suit laid out before me like evidence in a case I could never win. And then the truth hit me like a tidal wave, a truth I could not run from. I wasted everything, I choked out, my voice barely more than a breath. The words tore out of me like a confession I had been holding in for years. Every gift. Every moment. I buried it all in the ground. I expected anger. I expected judgment. But when I finally looked up, I saw tears in Jesus' eyes. Not disappointment, grief. Love so deep it ached to look at it. Then Jesus did something I will never forget for as long as I live or beyond. He reached out his hand and lifted me to my feet. Daniel, he said, and my name sounded like the first note of a song I had been waiting my whole life to hear. This is why you cannot stay. You have been shown the truth, but now you must choose what to do with it. I felt his grip steady me, strong enough to hold the universe, gentle enough to hold my shattered heart. Go back, he said, his voice trembling with something that sounded like longing. Live differently. Love differently. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what matters. The hall around us began to dissolve, the light folding in on itself like a curtain being drawn. No! I cried, reaching for him. I don't know how to live differently. You will, he said simply. Because now you know what counts. And knowing changes everything. Then I felt it, the pull, like being dragged through deep water toward the surface. The hall, the light, his face, all of it vanished as I was hurled back toward my broken body, toward the wreckage, toward the sound of shouting paramedics and the piercing smell of gasoline. And just before I opened my eyes again, I heard his voice one last time. This time, he said, don't waste it. I woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the sterile smell of antiseptic. My chest felt like it had been split open, because it had, and every breath burned. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming, still there in that place of light. Then I heard her. Emily. She was sitting at my bedside, her head in her hands, shoulders shaking. When she looked up and saw my eyes open, tears streamed down her face. You came back, she whispered, gripping my hand as though she might lose me again. I tried to speak, but my voice was raw, barely a whisper. I'm sorry. The doctors called it a miracle. 20 minutes with no pulse, yet here I was, breathing, speaking, alive. But my recovery was long and brutal. Months of surgeries, therapy, nights staring at the ceiling wondering why I was still here. And yet, every painful step was different now. I sold my luxury car first. Then the vacation house. Eventually, I walked away from my firm, the career I had built my life on. Colleagues thought I was insane, but I knew I had been given something better than winning another case, a chance to live a life that meant something. I started taking smaller cases, ones that didn't make headlines but brought justice to the forgotten. I represented the poor, the abused, the overlooked even when there was no paycheck attached. I began to notice people. The janitor cleaning the office late at night. The waitress who looked exhausted but still smiled. The neighbor I'd ignored for years. I bought groceries for families I knew were struggling. I paid tuition for kids who couldn't afford college. Slowly, the wall between me and my family began to come down. My son forgave me first, cautiously, like someone testing the strength of ice. My daughter took longer, but one night, as I helped her with a school project, she laid her head on my shoulder for the first time in years. The healing was slow, imperfect, but real. I was finally learning what it meant to love, not just in words, but in choices, every single day. I am older now. The scars from that crash still ache when it rains, but they no longer feel like punishment. They feel like reminders that I was given another chance. I won't pretend I've done it perfectly. I still fail. I still get angry. I still forget sometimes. But every morning, when I wake up, I remember the 3 questions. Do I know him? Do I love people? What am I doing with what I've been given? Those questions have become the compass of my life. They steer every decision, what cases I take, how I spend my money, how I speak to my wife and children, even how I treat the stranger who cuts me off in traffic. And now I have to ask you. Because one day, you will stand in that same hall. You will hear your name called. And you will face the same 3 questions. Don't wait until your heart stops to find the answers. Don't waste decades chasing shadows like I did, only to realize too late what truly matters. The questions aren't about punishment. They're about purpose. About why you were put on this earth. So I ask you now, not as a lawyer, not as a storyteller, but as someone who has seen what waits beyond the grave. If today were your judgment day, how would you answer?